So good morning once again, and wow, what times we're living in here, and it's quite fascinating at times for me. I still at times think it's kind of surreal, right? Like going into, I remember the first time going into Lassen's supermarket with a mask on, and how weird that was, you know? It's like, who would have thought a month before that we would all be walking around with masks on? And I appreciate everyone who showed up here wearing your mask today. But also amazing times that we're living in. So many opportunities for us to transform and transcend a lot of our habitual patterns and our habitual ways of being. It's kind of like disrupting our normal patterns. It's disrupting how we normally do things, our rote ways of doing things, our habitual ways of thinking, our habitual ways of doing and being. It's quite an amazing time on that level. So today, what an appropriate topic. We're talking about mindful action. And I would consider what we're doing here today, showing up with our masks on, showing up with social distancing where people are sitting here spaced out in the sanctuary as opposed to sitting right next to each other. I would say that's mindful action, and I really commend our board of trustees and our practitioners here at the center who spent literally hours in meetings and researching and looking at what is the safest way that we can come back together and open the center. That's mindful action, right? It's really taking care. This mindful action, it's kind of like, what is mindfulness to begin with? And it's about paying attention. It's about transcending habitual ways of being and thinking and choosing in this moment what will serve, as opposed to that we're just acting out of habitual ways of being and habitual ways of thinking. So mindfulness is being present. We're being present to ourselves. We're being present to the divine within us. We're being present to life. We're being present to others. Mindfulness, we're aware, we're awake, we're in this moment. Ram Dass, the author who passed sometime in recent years, wrote a book, a very famous book, I think it was in the 60s, called Be Here Now. And what a great title. You don't even have to read that book, right? You just say, be here now. That's a message in itself. That's a whole book right there. Just those few words. Be here now. Be present. Be awake. Be alert. Be alive. Sometimes people think of meditation as a very sleepy kind of activity where you just sit down and rest and relax for a little while. And it couldn't be further from the truth because, yes, meditation is very relaxing. But meditation is a state of heightened awareness, of heightened presence, of heightened alertness. It's not sleepy at all, except for those meditations that with a partner of mine we used to call nodding meditations, which is when I meditate when I'm tired, and then the head starts to nod, and it's like, oh, well, that's my nodding meditation. But awareness and aliveness is a very present moment kind of thing. How do we go about our lives where we're mindful in our actions? We're mindful. Last week's talk was mindful speech. How do we be mindful in everything we do? And that is really about how do we be present in each moment. In talking about mindful action, a big part of mindful action, a lot of times when we're taking action, we're so focused on the action itself. Like, what should I do? Right? That's a common question. What should I do? We'll ask a friend, what do you think I should do? We'll ask another friend, well, what do you think I should do? And so a lot of the focus is on the action and what should we do, but a really key part of mindful action would be not just the action itself, it would be, why am I taking this action? What is my intention in taking this action. Not just what's the right action, but what's the intention and what's behind it. What's motivating me to take this action? That's what mindful action is about, that I give great consideration, thoughtfulness, prayer, contemplation. Where am I moving from? If we look at the decision that we made to come back, to open the center, to require masks, to require some social distancing, what I call physical distancing, it's like, where were we coming from in that mindful action? The greatest place we were coming from is a place of care. We want to take the greatest care of the people who come and be with us here. We want to take the greatest care. And so the evidence so far, the medical evidence so far, says that physical distancing and wearing masks and washing hands are the best ways to take care of ourselves. And so we listen to that and we follow that. Mindful action. Where are we coming from? Are we coming from a place of we want to control people and we want people to do what we want them to do? No, not at all. There was not an ounce of conversation about that. The place we're coming from is, how do we take the greatest care of the people who come here and bless us with their presence? Mindful action. Why are we taking the action? Not just what is the action and what is the right action, but why? What am I being motivated by? We know that in our teaching, in the Science of Mind teaching, we know that what we put our attention on largely is what we begin to attract and draw into our life and manifest and create. So mindfulness would be very important in that, because if what we put our mind on and what we put our attention on and where our energy is and where our focus is and where we're coming from is manifesting and creating and drawing to us what we experience in life, then mindfulness would be key. Where is if I'm not mindful, which means I'm not present to myself, I'm not present to my emotions, I'm not present to my thoughts, if I'm not mindful, if I'm not present, how would I even know where I'm putting my attention? And where we put our attention is paramount. Because where we put our attention, energetically, emotionally, thought, mentally, is what is going to create our experience, is what is going to draw into our experience certain things and not draw into our experience certain other things. There was this quote I put on Facebook from Yogananda. I've been using as part of my spiritual practice for the last couple weeks Paramhansa Yogananda's book, Metaphysical Meditations, and I just take the first number that pops into my mind, and then I go to that page and I see what that page says, and it's been so serendipitous what comes up. And this most recent one that I read yesterday said, "I have buried dead disappointments in the cemeteries of yesterday. Today I will plow the garden of life with my new creative efforts." This is a mindfulness thing. If I am focused on all the disappointments of yesterday and all the things that didn't go well and all the things I didn't do right and all the mistakes I've made in my life, or even the mistakes I made last week, then that's where my attention is, and that's where I am creating from. I like to say, which many of you have probably heard me say, when it's kind of like, last week, it's like, that's so last week, You say, well, last week you did, well, that was last week. I was so unenlightened last week. I'm so much more enlightened this week than I was last week. Are you kidding me? Or when I give a talk, I always say, this is going to be the best talk I ever gave because I'm the best I've ever been. Like, I'm so much wiser than I was last Sunday. So this has got to be a much better talk. We're constantly, it's like, am I present in this moment? Am I mindful, or am I just living from habitual patterns? Or am I just focusing on what happened before? We say in Science of Mind, there's a quote in the textbook, one of my favorites, that says, principle is not bound by precedent. Meaning it doesn't matter what came before. It doesn't matter. We could have a whole lifetime, right? And people will hold us to that too. We have a whole lifetime of not being good in a certain area of life, or not manifesting certain things, or not getting it right in a certain area. And then we can even have friends and family members be like, "Oh, are you kidding me? Look, you've never, are you kidding me? Don't tell me you're going to manifest that. You've never been able to, and you've said that before." But it is our job to say that was yesterday. Today, I'm way more enlightened than I was yesterday. In tennis, we say that it's good to have a short memory. You know, like if you just missed a shot, right? You just made a mistake, you just missed a shot. Forget that. This is a new moment here. There's a new ball coming over there for me to hit right now. And this is really mentally, this is the psychological game of tennis, or it could be said about any sport. If you are still focused and thinking, because tennis happens so quickly. It happens so quickly, so it's a great metaphor for life. Because if you're still focused on that last shot that you just missed, you're not going to do too well with the next one. You're not going to do too well. In my mind, when that next, even though I haven't played for like 5 years, but I'm going to get back to it. In my mind, I have to be present to this moment of right now with this ball that's coming over the net right now, right here and right now. Present moment. I got to remember that I'm a great tennis player. I'm an amazing tennis player. I can get any shot. Even if I just missed the most basic and the most simple shot, in this moment, I can hit any ball that comes over this net. I can't be in that space of oh, look how badly I messed up that shot. Oh, I can't believe I did that. Mindfulness. Can I be present to this moment, and can I be constantly releasing the disappointments of yesterday? The mistakes, in quotes. There really are no mistakes. Everything is really just part of our evolution. That's how we got to be so much more enlightened today than we were yesterday, because of our so-called mistake that we made. One of my greatest mistakes was the first time I ever spoke to a large group of people. And it was so profound in allowing me to be the speaker that I am today. Because I was in graduate school, and I was asked to introduce the CEO of Texaco as a guest speaker in what we called the Distinguished Speaker Series. And it was like high-profile people, and this man was really in the news at that time, and he was very well known. And there were also some things he was in the news for that weren't so positive. But nonetheless, I was to introduce him. And I had never spoken in front of 100 or so people before. But and the person who invited me to do it said, "Listen, don't try to memorize it." She said, "Write it down. Write this down." And I heard that. But in my mind, I rehearsed it, and I'm like, I got this. No problem. Well, I got up there, and I didn't realize that I had never stood in front of 100 people, and I didn't realize what it was going to feel like to have 100, 200 eyes, if you take 2 for each person, on me in that moment. I didn't realize what that would feel like. And so there I was, with all those eyes on me. Everything about this man left my mind except that he was the CEO of Texaco. There was nothing else I had in that moment. And so I said things like, he's the CEO of Texaco, he's a swell guy, he's wonderful, he's done great things. He's very well known for these great things. Literally, this is how I had to get through this. It was painful, right? Because I'm like, everyone knows I'm totally blowing this right now. Everyone knows I totally don't know what I'm talking about. But the positive was this man had a lot of negative press, and everything I said was positive. So he came up and he was all happy. He was like, "Thank you very much for that intro." Some of the things, if I would have remembered them, might not have been quite as. Of course, I probably wouldn't have focused on those. But that so-called mistake Now I knew what it felt like to have 100 people staring at me. Now I knew what it felt like to have 200 eyes on me. And so I was transformed. I wasn't the same after that. So the so-called mistake was profound in allowing me to develop as a speaker. It was like, oh, that's what it feels like when all those eyes are on you. There was a moment where I introduced Danny Glover and Alice Walker at East Bay Church in Oakland, the first Science of Mind community I came into. We had a big benefit, and those two were local people. They lived in the Bay Area. And somehow we got them to be our special guests, and it was beautiful because they were both part of the movie The Color Purple. Alice Walker wrote the book, and Danny Glover was an actor in it. And apparently they had not talked to each other since then. So we billed it as the first time that Danny Glover and Alice Walker are coming together since The Color Purple. So that was a big, so we got a whole, we filled a convention center full of people for this event. And I got to introduce them. And again, it was this moment where in the convention center, they use a spotlight. It's not like in here where you're just standing here in normal light. It's in the dark, and the spotlight is on the speaker. And so there I was, about to introduce them, and I was totally prepared. I was totally confident. That other experience was years ago. I'm like, I got this. Now I've been in front of several hundred people now. Like, I'm good. And I got up there, and I looked into that light, which apparently don't do that. Don't look into the spotlight. Because I got up there and I was good, and I stood up there and I looked right into that light, and I was totally blind. For like a second, I was totally blind, and it totally threw me off. I was like, oh no. Can't see anyone, I'm disoriented. But that former experience from way back then just said, stay centered, stay present. And within about a second, my eyesight came back. So it was like a moment that most people probably didn't even notice. It was a moment of panic. So we get to be present to the moment. Mindful action is I am present to the moment. I am aware, I am awake, I am alert. Ernest Holmes said, work without vision is drudgery, but vision without work is self-deception. All right, let me read that again. Work without vision is drudgery, but vision without work is self-deception. And so we have this phrase in Science of Mind. It says, treat and move your feet. Treat is like our spiritual mind treatment, which is our form of affirmative prayer. And we say, do your treatment, do your prayer, and then move into action. I like to say it a little bit differently. I like to say, treat and allow your feet to be moved, because that's a more surrendered place. That means I say my prayer, and then I'm willing to play whatever is my part in the prayer. Sometimes not a big part, sometimes a very big part. Mindful action. What is mine to do? That's a question, especially these days, right, that a lot of us ask ourselves. We see all the events going on in the world, and we say, what is mine to do? And a lot of times, we allow that to stop us, and we get confused by that question. We say, gosh, with all this going on and what's oh my God. And so we step into confusion with that question. What is mine to do? Oh. But a lot of times we're thinking too far out in the what is mine to do. We're trying to figure it all out. But the mindful action would have us say, what is mine to do right here, right now, in this moment? Right here, right now. Because if I can do what I'm supposed to be doing, if I can do what I'm called to do, if I can do what's mine to do in this moment, and then in this moment, and then in this moment, and in this moment, then I will always be doing what is mine to do. There will never be a moment when I'm not doing what is mine to do. So we don't have to figure it all out. And then it requires that we learn to trust ourselves. I think that's a big lesson for humanity right now. A big lesson for humanity right now for each of us individually is to really learn to trust ourselves more, which really is not trusting ourselves in the smaller sense of who we think of who we are, but it is trusting ourselves in that larger sense that we are a divine expression of spirit. So it is trusting that infinite divine wisdom within us that is always, 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 always guiding us. It is never not guiding us. So constantly, moment by moment by moment, we are constantly being guided, and the only question is, do we trust it? Do we trust that guidance? Have we learned to listen in to that still small voice, that guidance that is ever whispering to us what to do? Have we learned to trust ourselves? Have we learned to trust the divine? One of my favorite scriptures in Matthew, a few words here, but I'm going to share it with you, and you probably have heard it before. It says, "Consider the lilies of the field." Consider the lilies of the field. They grow, they toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you, that even Solomon in all of his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Wherefore, if God so clothe the grass of the field, which today is and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall God not much more clothe you, O ye of little faith, it says? Therefore, take no thought, saying, what shall I eat, or what shall we drink, or wherewithal shall we be clothed? For your heavenly Father knows that you have need of all these things. So seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. Seek first to know the presence of the divine right within us. Seek first to learn to trust that still small voice at the center of our being that is constantly whispering so much wisdom to us. How often do we claim that we're confused, we don't know, I don't know, I'm just little old me here, I don't know what to do, I don't know what's going on. And yet, infinite wisdom and intelligence at our center is constantly whispering to us everything we need to know to take the most mindful, aware, alert, enlightened decisions and actions that we could take. The beauty of this is that this infinite wisdom and intelligence is no more present in one person than it is in another person. You know how we think there are special people? Well, that's possible for that person, but no, that wisdom, that infinite intelligence is equally present in every person, everywhere. Each of us a conduit. Each of us a divine expression of that one. So each of us capable of taking mindful action moment by moment by moment. Are we willing to be fully present in this moment? Are we willing to see? A lot of times we're not fully present in the moment, right? I'll speak for myself, and I'm very practiced at this. But sometimes I like to go, that more human part of me, I should say, because in my most conscious intention I would never do it. But that more human part of me sometimes just likes to go unconscious, right? Like right now I just want to eat all this sugary stuff, even though my conscious choice is to eat really healthy. But in this moment, I just want to go unconscious for a moment. And I just want to do something that I know is not in alignment with my intention and not in alignment with what's best for my body. But in this moment, I just want to go unconscious. And the further I go along the path, there's less and less and less and less a part of me that is willing to do that. But once in a while, there's that part of me that wants to go unconscious. Are we willing to be present in every moment, to show up? Because sometimes For me, what has led me to not want to be conscious is that part that's uncomfortable. You know, we get to that part that's uncomfortable, like where I have to look at a part of myself that I haven't looked at before. I have to look at a part of myself, I don't want to see that right now. Don't show me that right now. Or, you know, if someone in your spiritual community says, you know, you're whole, perfect, and complete, you're like, yeah, I know that. Don't give me that crap. Excuse me. We're not willing to look sometimes at where we're out of alignment. We're not willing to always look at these things. When in my beginning days of meditation, which now I've been meditating, I don't know how I could be meditating longer than I've been alive, but I've been meditating for over 40 years, and certainly I can't be over 40 years in age, I'm sure. But I've been meditating for over 40 years, and in the early days of my meditation, I would notice a pattern. And the pattern would go something like this. I'd be meditating regularly, every day. And then suddenly a week would go by where I hadn't meditated. I'd be like, well, what was that about? And what I realized in every case, whenever I went that long, if I just missed a day, okay, you could miss a day, you know, things happen. But if I missed 2 or 3 or more days, there was a consistent pattern I noticed, which was that there was something, the question always became, what do you not want to face? Because in meditation, we come face to face with ourselves. We're present. Meditation is all about being present to this now moment. If we're present, if we're fully present, there's no place to run and no place to hide. When we're fully present, we see clearly. We see ourselves clearly. We see the world clearly. So part of this journey, I find, is the willingness to be present even when it's uncomfortable. And to pay attention to when it's uncomfortable, to become aware that we're aware. Become aware of when I am not allowing myself to be present, when I'm not allowing myself to get still, because I don't want to see. I don't want to know. A lot of times when we say, I don't know, I don't know, well, what do you think you should do? Well, I don't know. You don't know? No, I don't know. I'm confused. Count me confused. Write me down as confused. And a lot of times what we really mean is, I know what to do, but I don't want to do that. Because the divine wisdom is constantly saying, this is what you're to do. The divine wisdom is constantly, you know, and if we really dialogue with each other, right? When someone's saying, I don't want to do, in the saying, I don't know what to do, we will hear that person say exactly what they need to do very clearly and succinctly. It's a very common thing. When someone says, I don't know what to do. I know that I should do this. I don't know what to do, though. You know, it's like a little subliminal message that comes in. Well, I know I should do this. And then 10 sentences about how we don't, not they, I, we, us. We're constantly guided. It's never absent from us. Constantly guided by divine wisdom. And the only question becomes, am I willing to be mindful? Am I willing to be present? Am I willing to be aware, even when it feels uncomfortable? Because what I also know is those moments where it has felt uncomfortable, those moments where I didn't want to face it, my thought of it was way larger than the thing itself. The moment I faced it, it was like a momentary, discomfort, right? I had to feel the emotions that came up. I had to look at things that I didn't want to look at. But it was very momentary once I was willing to look at it. And then I'm on my merry way. And I'm beyond it, and I've transcended it, and I can step into the bigger fullness of who I am, and I'm not blocked. You see, that's the part of this. When we are unwilling to get still, when we're unwilling to be present, we're unwilling to look at the stuff. It's like we create a blockage with that resistance. It's essentially resistance. And we create a blockage with that resistance. And so the calling is, the invitation this day really is about, am I willing to be fully present? And am I willing to be uncomfortable in those moments, knowing without a shadow of a doubt that that discomfort is simply my transformation that is happening. That's all it is. I'm being transformed. I said I wanted to be transformed. That's what I asked for. I asked to be transformed. I didn't come into a Science of Mind community saying, please, God, keep my life exactly the way it is. Don't bring anything new in. I just want it to stay exactly the way it is. No, we came into the Science of Mind community because we heard this is an empowering teaching. In this teaching, we can really step into the fullness of our creativity and our divine expression and our wholeness and our love. And so whether we directly asked for it or not, at least indirectly, we said, God, life, universe, I want to be transformed. Transform my life because I want to be living in the fullness of who I am. I want to show up in the fullness of who I am. That's what we've asked for. And those moments of discomfort are those moments where Spirit said, okay, here you go. Here's that transformation you've been asking for. It's going to feel, you know how when they give you a needle and they go, this is going to hurt just a little bit. And sometimes the last one I got was a tetanus shot, and it was like, no, that hurt a lot. And then it hurt for 3 or 4 days. Momentary discomfort, eternal salvation. Momentary discomfort, eternal salvation. We're free. We're being freed. We're being liberated from our limitations. If we can just be willing in that moment to experience a little momentary discomfort. Whoa, how did that happen? This clock is wrong. It says I've been talking for over 30 minutes and I only plan to talk for 20 to 25. I can't blame that clock because I've got my own clock here. Well, all right then. So let's just bring this home. Let's bring this home. So we come back to, in mindfulness, why am I doing what I'm doing? Not just what am I doing, but where am I coming from? Where am I coming from? There was an example on any of you have seen the show with Larry David, Curb Your Enthusiasm. It was an HBO show, and Larry David plays a fictionalized version of himself. And when he has been interviewed about it, he says, those are the things I would like to be able to say, because he has no filter on the show. He just says whatever comes to his mind, and every show he basically gets in trouble for not having any filters. Well, on that show, he opened up a coffee shop. And it became known as a spite store. And then it became like, on the show, it became like this trend of people opening spite stores. Like, I'm opening a store, I'm opening a coffee shop next to the coffee shop that treated me wrong. And I'm going to, out of spite, I'm going to open a coffee store right next to them. So for me, it's an example of how opening a coffee store as an action would seem to be, okay, that's a good action, you're opening a coffee store. But why are you opening a coffee store? Right? An example in real life, because that was sort of pretend life. In real life, it would be, I'm opening the store because I don't feel good enough, and I think if I have a store, people will think highly of me, and I'll think I'm okay then. That would not be an example of mindful action. Because why am I doing what I'm doing? It's not just what I'm doing. Why am I doing it? Mindful action would always be moving from love. It would always be moving from the truth of our wholeness. It would always be moving from the truth of our courage and our power and our strength. So if the intention was I want to hide, or I want to use something outside of myself to make me feel whole, it would not be an empowering intention. It would not be a mindful action. So the invitation today is for us to really be willing to be present to all that wants to unfold for us. So much wants to unfold for each one of us. Life is trying to give us so much good. Life is just, life is trying to give us so much good constantly through us. And so the invitation is to be willing to listen in and be willing to be moved into that divine perfect action that allows us to be everything we are meant to be. What is mine to do? Mine is to listen and to allow myself to be used in all the ways that infinite spirit within me would like to use me. It's that simple. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, applause in the audience. Haven't heard that for a while. You don't get that from the people online. I know you're applauding at home too. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's take that into prayer here. And so we just know in this moment that God is all there is. That there's just one power, one presence, one infinite spirit, one essence of love, of wholeness, of harmony, and it is expressing through infinite forms, through infinite souls. It is the very life of my life. It is the very life of each one of us here. It is the life of each one that concerns each one of us here. And so in this awareness of our oneness, I speak this word right now, and I declare and know that beautiful voice of infinite wisdom and intelligence within each one of us is just so discernible right here and right now. Every one of us who is saying, yes, I'll listen to that voice. Yes, I'll take that mindful action. The way is right now being made. And anything that would seem to obscure that would seem to hinder that would seem to block it, that would seem to get in the way of it, is right now dissolved. It has no power anymore. It has no bind on us anymore. And we are free. We are free to hear, to listen, to express, to be fully used by the presence of the divine right where we are, which truly is the highest nature of our own self. And so I am just so grateful for this truth, this awareness, and for all the good that is manifesting right here and right now. I release this, I let it be, and I invite each one to ground it with me, if you're so inclined, with the words, and so it is. Yes.